Now, let us enlighten our mind for the first travel Rizal and abroad. After finishing the 4th year of the medical course in the University of Santo Tomas or UST, Rizal decided to complete his studies in Spain. He left for the Philippines for the first time, going to Spain, boarded on the stream Salvadora, bound for using a passport of Jose Mercado. Rizal has his secret mission, and it was to observe keenly the life, culture, languages, customs, industries, commerce, government, and laws of the European nations in order to prepare himself in the mighty task of liberating his oppressed people from Spanish tyranny. May 8, 1882, Rizal in Singapore. While the steamer Salvadora was approaching Singapore, Rizal saw a beautiful island, fascinated by its scenic beauty. He remembered Talim Island with the Susung Dalaga. He registered Hotel de la Paz and spent 2 days for the sightseeing and enjoying the beauty of the city, which was a colony of England. May 17, 1882, Rizal in Colombo. He reached Point Galle and he was unimpressed by this town. Rizal wrote on his travel diary and said, "The general appearance of Point Galle is picturesque, but lonely and quiet, and at the same time sad." It was important for him to improve his knowledge of the French language while he was on board French ship named Gemna, because majority of the passengers were French speaking. Rizal was enamored by Colombo because of its scenic beauty and elegant buildings. He also visited Aden, a city hotter than Manila. Rizal was amused to see the camels for the first time.
June 2, 1882, he arrived at the Zoo Canal en route to Marseilles, city of Zoo, the Red Sea terminal of the Zoo Canal. Rizal was impressed in the beautiful moonlight which reminded him of the Calamba and his family. Zoo Canal is the canal which built by Ferdinand de Lesseps, French diplomat engineer, which was inaugurated on November 17, 1869. The said port is the Mediterranean terminal of the Zoo Canal. June 11, 1882, Rizal disembarked and accompanied by a guide went around the city of Naples for 1 hour. This was the first European ground he set foot on. Rizal was pleased on this Italian city because of its business activity, its lively people, and its panoramic beauty. June 12, 1882, at 10 o'clock in the evening, the boat anchored at Marseilles. He slept on board. Rizal visited the famous Chateau d'If, where Dante's hero of the Count of Monte Cristo was imprisoned. Rizal stayed 2.5 days in Marseilles. June 15, 1882, he left Marseilles for Barcelona in an express train. Rizal crossed the Pyrenees and stopped for a day at the frontier town of Port-Bou. June 16, 1882, at 12 noon, Rizal arrived at Barcelona and boarded in the Fonda de España. Rizal's first impression of Barcelona, the greatest city of Catalonia and Spain's second largest city, was unfavorable.
Rizal's life in Barcelona. He wrote an essay entitled Amor Patrio or Love of Country. His next article was entitled Los Viajes or Travels and followed by Revista de Madrid or Review of Madrid. But the latter was returned because the publication was ceased because of lack of funds.
August 20, 1882, article Amor Patrio was published in the Diarong Tagalog, a Manila newspaper edited by Basilio Teodoro. This was the first article he wrote abroad.
On September 2, 1882, Rizal moved into abroad in order to continue his medical studies. To November 3, 1882, Rizal enrolled at the Universidad Central de Madrid in 2 courses, medical and philosophy and letters.
Rizal's second trip, Hong Kong and Macau. February 3, 1888. Rizal left the Philippines half-sick and disillusioned. Zafiro, the vessel he ride on. The vessel arrived in Amoy, Xiamen, China, but Rizal did not land because of his frail health, the city's rainy weather, and the report that the city was dirty. While in Hong Kong, he met Jose Maria Basa and Balbino Mauricio and Mauricio Yarte, who were former exiles from the Philippines because of the events in 1972. Sa Insa de Veranda, a former secretary of Gulf Torero that spied Rizal while was in Hong Kong. February 18, Rizal and Basa went to Macau, rowed in a vessel called Kyukyang. Rizal also visited neighboring Macau, where he stayed from February 1820. February 22, 1888, Rizal left Hong Kong on board the Oceanic.
Rizal in Japan. Rizal was arrived at Yokohama on February 28, 1888. He stayed at the Grand Hotel or Hotel Grande. The next day, he went to Tokyo and stayed there from March 2 to 7. Later, he moved over to the Spanish legation on invitation since staying with the Spaniards would save him money, and he believed that he had nothing to hide from them. Rizal was impressed with Japan's culture, the beauty of the country, plants, flowers, gardens, mountains and rivers, kimono, hospitality, gift-giving, politeness through bowing, few beggars on the streets, few thieves and clean houses. The Japanese are happy and industrious people.
United States of America. Rizal boarded the English vessel Belgic on April 18, 1888. Rizal reached San Francisco on April 28, 1888. Dubbed America's motherland for the poor who wish to work. He described America as a great country, but it has many defects too. They don't have real civil liberty. When he was asked by Jose Alejandro about his impression of the country, he stated, "America is the land par excellence of freedom, but only for the whites. They experienced discrimination in America upon arrival, for they weren't allowed to disembark. Chinese passengers were even quarantined much longer on board." Rizal arrived in New York on May 13, 1888. He called New York the Big Town.
Rizal in London. He lived in London for May 1888 to March 1889. He chose it for 3 reasons. First is to improve his knowledge on English. Second is to study Dr. Antonio de Morgan's book, Successes de las Islas Filipinas, which is found in the British Museum. Third is London was safe from the Spaniards. He worked in the British Museum library, studied, copied, and published Morgan's book. He stayed as a guest of Dr. Antonio Marigidor. By May, he moved to a boarding house owned by a Bickett family. Because he was an excellent linguist, he became good friends with Dr. Reinhold Rust, a Sanskrit scholar, the greatest scholar of the century. He even spent time with him. Rust was impressed with his manners and called him Una Perla de Hombre, or Pearl of the Man. He wrote a pamphlet against Fray Rodriguez, La Vision del Fray Rodriguez. Other works of Rizal: Letter to Young Women of Malolos, Specimen of Tagal Folklore, and 2 Eastern Fables.
Paris, France. Too many tourists in the city, so he stayed in Valentin Ventura. He transferred from different hotels and boarding houses. visited the home of Pardo de Tavera, composed The Story of the Monkey and the Tortoise. He was fascinated by Universal Exposition, especially the Eiffel Tower on May 6, 1889. He organized the Kidlat Club with Filipinos who wanted to join the expo. He finalized his copy of Morga's book, which showed evidence that the Filipinos were ready, civilized before the Spaniards came. He planned to establish a college in Hong Kong with the help of Mr. Mariano Cunanan, who promised to help him raise 40,000 pesos. Unfortunately, it did not succeed, but it was exiled in the Pitan. He was able to establish a boys' school. He wrote again another satire entitled Por Telefono as a reply to Father Salvador Font, his slanderer. He left for Brussels, Belgium, arrived on January 28, 1890.
Madrid, Spain. Failure to get justice for the family. Colombo was in chaos. Spanish statement only contributed words of sympathy. Second is the death of Jose Maria Panganiban, his propaganda comrade in Barcelona due to illness in August 19, 1890. Third is aborted duel with Antonio Luna and Wenceslao Tanner. Fourth is infidelity of Leonor Rivera, planning to get married to an Englishman. And lastly is Rizal and Del Pilar rivalry and abdication of leadership in La Solidaridad, leading to divisions of the Filipino community in Madrid. In Biarritz, France, Rizal wanted to take a rest from the problems he was carrying. He stayed in Biarritz for 1 month. He finished Il Filibusterismo here. He retired from propaganda movement and he wanted to focus on publishing Il Fili and his medical profession. He was deciding to settle either in the Philippines, Hong Kong, or Japan because Europe seemed a banishment to him due to the conflict in La Solidaridad.